welcome to Woodworkers Toolbox Sundays, and today I'm going to talk about the paring chisel. But first, if you'd be most kind, you can click the little subscribe and then the little bell icon, because then you'll get little notifications of every time I upload a new video, which I would hope you'd be excited about. But first of all, let's talk about the paring chisel, and do you really need one? Now, the paring chisel has been around for a very long time, and traditionally it would have been a pattern maker's tool for making patterns for the process of casting steel. But I won't get into that at the moment, because that's not what this video is about. It's about woodworkers and how we use the paring chisel, and do you really need one? Now, I have 3 paring chisels that I like to use, and to be frank with you, this very old Braid's cast steel paring chisel is probably my favourite, and I do use it quite a lot. Some of the modern variants of the paring chisel, such as this Henry Taylor, which you can quite happily buy, is a very, very good chisel, but I don't feel it is a true paring chisel other than it's got a long blade. Now, why has a paring chisel got a long blade? The paring chisel has a long blade for 2, maybe 3 reasons. One is, the most obvious, is so you can reach across your workpiece. So if you're using your paring chisel in a halving joint, for instance, you can pare right across the joint. And paring is the process of removing very small amounts of timber at a time, very thin shavings. The other reason why you'd have a long blade on the paring chisel is for control. The longer it is, the more control you've got. So you have more control. A shorter chisel, such as this Stanley 5002 series bevel chisel, has less control. You never impact your paring chisel with one of them or one of them. Not a good idea, don't do it. Unless you're using one of these, which is kind of a paring, it's actually a framing chisel with a bevel edge, which still has quite a thin profile to the bevel, which is quite good. This you do impact, as you can probably tell, with either that or even bigger. And that's great for framing oak. This simple bevel edged chisel, you can obviously strike that with a hammer, or preferably the mallet. It's got a high impact plastic handle. Now, do you really need a paring chisel? Well, yes and no. I think most people could probably get away with this one. Oh, hello! Welcome to my woodworking channel, Woodworkers, the place where you'll learn woodworking tips and tricks. And if you'd be most kind, hammer that subscribe button. Anyway, it's time to get back to the video. This Stanley 5002 chisel is not expensive. It's very good value for money. It's a fairly good grade of steel. You can get a hell of an edge on it. But also, the characteristic of this particular chisel, in comparison to other bevel chisels, such as this bevel chisel here, the actual taper of the blade to the point on the bevel is very thin. Very thin at that point. And that is very good for paring. Now, the reason why that's good for paring is it allows you to get into the corners. For instance, the shoulders around a tenon, or even more so would be the shoulders around the pins of a dovetail joint. This is actually a really nice little chisel to own. It's non-pretentious. It just does the job. It really does. It's a good chisel for not a lot of money. And this is the 32mm wide version. But if we get back to the paring chisels, let's move these out of the way at the moment. If we get back to these paring chisels here, for the more modern chisels such as this Henry Taylor, which I'm not sure what the steel is of the Henry Taylor, but a lot of modern chisels use a 2 grade steel or PMV 11 grade steel. When you consider the sharpening angles required for a good paring chisel, it doesn't lend itself to that grade of steel. A better grade of steel would be the 01 grade of steel, either hand forged or drop forged. This particular braids paring chisel is cast steel. The beauty about this chisel is that you can sharpen it to less than 20 degrees, and the beauty about that is you can take off very thin shavings. Remembering you're not going to be doing any high impact cutting work with a paring chisel, it's all hand work. The Henry Taylor is much thicker along its length. I would say this is more of a framing chisel actually than an actual paring chisel, other than the fact it has a long blade and it's controllable. This little Robert Sorby hair is very much like the braids, but it's also a tad thicker, but it is very thin still. The beauty about these thinner chisels is that they give you more control because you can flex the blade. For instance, when you're using the braid paring chisel, you're controlling hand to push the chisel forwards to make the paring cut, but equally with your left hand you hold it down and you flex it, so you put some flex into it, and that gives you a lot more control. Whereas the thicker ones, you have to rely purely on the flat surface of the paring chisel to get that level of control, and that's fine providing the thing that you're putting it on is flat. At the end of the day, you're trying to pare it, so it's not flat, is it? You're trying to clean it up. Although I prefer, obviously, my older chisels heads, old Robert Sorby, and my braids, there are a number of chisels available to you for the purpose of paring. Some are better than the others. We have the slightly thicker bladed Henry Taylor dynamic chisel. Not too much money. They are very good quality, so I can't deny that. You then got other makers that don't have here, such as Crown. They make a lovely chisel and it's pretty thin bladed. The Lee Nielsen, yeah, need I say more, makes a really nice chisel, but it's not cheap. It's also very thin bladed. It's just a lovely thing. But Narex, which is is it Swedish? I think it's Swedish. Narex make a series of paring chisels actually of a variety of different patterns. And that is actually very useful because they make a nice skew chisel, right and left-handed, which you can use for paring around the pins of a dovetail, for instance. Very good for that. I also believe they make a dovetail chisel as well. I might be wrong, I might need to be corrected on that one, but I think they do. Another chisel available to you is the cranked paring chisel. Now the cranked paring chisel is actually very, very useful. The reason for that is you don't need such a long blade necessarily, other than for control, but because it's cranked, what I mean by that is the handle is set at an angle and doesn't interfere with the line of sight from the bottom of the blade. So in this case, you see, we look along the bottom of this blade, we are looking at the handles, so we come across here and then the handle's in the way. With the cranked one, the handle's up here and it doesn't interfere with that line of sight. The good thing about that is you can actually pare across much wider pieces of timber, so much wider joints. You can use the cranked paring chisel for cleaning the corners of a frame for which you've cut a rebate in with a router, and you know you get that left that little bit in the corner. The cranked paring chisel is ideal for that because the handle does not get in the way. So talking about the brands of paring chisel available to you, you have obviously the Henry Taylor, which has been around since 1834, I believe. I did read that somewhere. And they've been making paring chisels for a very long time. Possibly some of their older ones might be better than the new ones. I can't comment on that because I don't really know, because I don't have an old one. Lee Nielsen, needless to say, makes some very nice paring chisels. But also you've got the Narex brand of paring chisels too, such as the cranked paring chisel and also the Skew paring chisels. They are a Swedish brand, I believe that is correct. The Narex paring chisels are actually very good. They have a very nicely thin, very finely beveled sides to the paring chisels, which makes it great for obviously for paring around the dovetails. Depending on which model you get, they're Hornbeam handles, and they're actually a really nice chisel. They look very functional. They're not the prettiest of chisels in the world, I'd say, but they are actually very, very good chisels for the money. And I'll put some links down below regarding some of these chisels that are on offer to you. So in conclusion, do you need a paring chisel? Now, if you're a regular woodworker like I am, I would say yes, without a shadow of doubt, you need one. But if you are a general woodworker, hobbyist for instance, and not really into tool porn, I would say if you've got a good set of bevel edge chisels with a lovely thin edge to the bevel, like this Stanley 5002, well then I'll say you can get away with that quite happily for most purposes. Just learn how to sharpen your chisels. Remembering that a chisel like this, you can sharpen down to about 25 degrees. And chisels like these, you can sharpen, especially these two, you can sharpen well below 20 degrees if you really need to. And they can give you a very, very, very fine edge. But you can't put any force on these, no levering, no nothing like that, other than flexing the blade. Whereas the bevel chisel, such as this one, you can make impact even with a hammer, but preferably with the mallet. Anyway, I hope you found my Toolbox Sunday video on the paring chisel of help. Cold in this workshop. The wood burner's gone out. And the light's just gone out. Hell, anyone there? Hello? Hello? Don't like the dark? Hello? Anybody there? Oh, there you are! Well, you managed to get to the end of my video. Well, either I must have grabbed your attention, or you just couldn't be bothered to click off. If you'd be most kind and subscribe, and maybe click the little bell icon, because then you'll get a notification every time I upload a new woodworking video. And I know you'd be excited about that. So, hammer that like button, hammer that subscribe button, and comment below.